Hello everyone, Emil here from ProGuitar.com. I am back with another free lesson, a theory lesson once again. And I'm gonna actually expand a little bit on the subject that I discussed the last time. We talked about chord substitution, diatonic chord substitution. Now I'm gonna get outside of the key a little bit, and I'm gonna teach you a little bit about secondary dominants and the tritone substitution. This sounds a little bit boring maybe when you hear me speak about it like this, but I think you can actually use some of these ideas in your own playing fairly quickly if you haven't already. I just wanted to let you know the tricks and techniques that I use when I'm playing or when I'm writing arrangements and songs. You can use these ideas as well as when you're accompanying someone or playing solo guitar. These ideas are so useful, and I use them every day when I play. So I wanted to talk about this subject with you today. Hopefully you can get something out of this. So I brought my iPad today as well, so that I can explain in detail what I'm doing and how I think about these things. So actually I'm just going to bring up this chart here. And in the last lesson we talked about the song Blue Moon because it was a good example, and I showed you how you can change some chords and substitute some chords using the chords from the key of C major. And so I'm just going to write the melody of Blue Moon, the beginning of the song, right here, and we'll talk about what we can do. So here we go. Okay, so the chords that we had in Blue Moon is usually a 1-6-2-5 chord progression, and in the key of C major, that would be C major 7 to A minor 7 to D minor 7 to G7, right? And then back to C. So this melody goes like this. And so forth. And what we're going to do now, we're going to take a look at a secondary dominant option here that we can do. So if you look at this A minor right here, this chord, that is the 6th chord in the key of C major. First of all, I'm actually going to, before I continue, I'm going to change that first chord to an E minor. You'll see, you'll notice why I'm doing that later on here. But at E minor 7, we're going to start that's if you don't know what I did just there, in the last lesson, diatonic chord substitution, I explain why you can change that E minor instead of the C major, the 1 chord. So I changed this that C chord to a 3 chord, the 3rd chord of C major, which is E minor. In the last lesson we discussed that the 1 chord and the 3 chord and the 6 chord have many notes in common, so that's why you can swap them, So E minor to A minor, D minor to G7. Now it sounds like this. Okay, so let's take a look at that A minor chord. So I'm just gonna show you that chord on the fingerboard, and it's the 5th fret is the A note, and we have, I'm just gonna write a simple shell voicing of that chord, A minor. So that's A, G, and C. If I play the melody once again, that works great, right? That's just chords from the C major scale right there. So the A minor 7, that is actually, if you look at that chord and you look where it's going to the 2 chord. And sometimes when you have that kind of a 5-1 relationship or situation, when you go up a 4th or down a 5th, like we do here, this is a cycle of 5th, right? We start on E minor, go to A minor, D, G. So it's a cycle. It follows the cycle of 5th. So E goes a 5th down to A, which goes a 5th down to D, or a 4th up. It's the same thing, right? And then the D goes to G, a 5th down, and then it goes a 4th up or 5th down, same thing, to C. So it's a cycle. Right? So what we can do here, if we want to add some tension, we can add some tension to that chord that will take us to the D minor, and it will sound very natural if we just make that chord a major chord instead of a minor chord. And that's very, very common in songs, that you have the 6th chord, the the sixth chord of the key is a dominant chord instead of a minor chord. So let's just change that chord, change that note, that C note, and we make it instead of a C, we make it a C sharp, and it looks like that. So if I would write it out in notation real quick, it looks like that. So we have the A, F, A, G, and C sharp. We'll get some tension in this. If you look at this interval right here, we have some tension. That's a tritone interval. You can hear that that's actually creates some tension towards the next chord. So if you listen to the progression again, if I will play that chord instead of an A minor 7, I'm playing this now as an A7, okay? So this is a dominant 7 instead of A minor 7. And listen to the sound of that. It sounds like this now. Before we had the minor chord. Let me do it again with the dominant chord and add some tension to the A7 or to the A chord. So you could hear that instead of, that's more inside of the key. That C sharp doesn't belong in the key, but it sounds very natural because we're going to the D minor. So you can always add some tension if you have that relationship going up a fourth or down a fifth. You can try and make it the dominant 7, and sometimes it will sound perfect, and sometimes it will not sound very good because it depends on where the melody is in the song. But in this case, it worked out fine. So we have the A7, and why does it work? Well, actually, if we just look at it, you don't even have to read notation to be able to understand this. But I'll still write it out here. And these two notes, they want to resolve. This one wants to go down a whole step to the minor third of the next chord. So it wants to go from G to F. And that C sharp really wants to go to the D note of the next chord. So you hear these two notes, tension, right? And then they resolve on the next chord. It can also go, that C sharp can go to C, which is the flat 7 of the next chord, and that sounds great as well. So you hear the tension. And it's called the devil's interval, that tritone substitution. Way back in the day, you weren't allowed, in church music, you know, in choral and choirs, you weren't allowed to sing this interval because it was the devil's interval. It was too much tension. But now you have, you know, Metallica, Enter Sandman. That's some tension right there. I hope they don't copyright strike me for that one. Anyway, so that is used everywhere in rock music, but also in jazz music, of course. That's kind of the basis of everything, you know, when it comes to tension and release, the dominant 7 chord that is resolved. So you can hear that. And so forth. So anyway, now you can hear that. I'm gonna just write it out again. So that C sharp wants to go up to the D note. This wants to go here. This wants to go here. Okay? So that's why it works so well. I'm just writing it like that so you can see. So, and that sounds great. It's a tension release. Right? So this could be a great thing for you to try out. Now, I only changed one chord really. I played the E minor as the first chord of the song. I changed that from the C, but otherwise it's the same progression, but I'm making that A chord a dominant chord instead of a minor chord to create some tension and hopefully some interest to the listener. And maybe the improviser who's going to play a solo, he or she is going to have to go outside of the key instead of playing, you know, now we're gonna play outline that A7, you know, so So anyway, A7 instead of A minor. Now I have a tip for you here. So this is really fun to do. If you look at the A7 and you take a look at those notes, I'm playing shell voicing A, G, and C sharp, right? Just like I notated here. If we would play at the tritone tone from A, that would be this note, the E flat or D sharp. That's the tritone from A. Tritone means 3 whole steps. So 3 whole steps, 1, 2. You get to that note. So that's why it's called tritone. So if I would play the same 2 notes here, the flat 7 and the third of A, but I'm playing this note instead of A in the bass and keeping these 2. In other words, look at the paper, I take away the A note and I play this note instead. This is E flat. This is E flat. And what happens? Well, actually, we have a dominant chord that's going to want to resolve to the D minor as well. So you could actually change that A7 and substitute that for a for an E flat 7. And listen to the melody now. If I do that, you could hear that it really works. It really works. So if I would just play the chords, you could hear that it works, right? So I'm gonna change that now. The A7, I'm gonna make a tritone substitution, and I'm gonna just add a little bit more tension, because that bass note is gonna wanna, it sounds a little bit like, oops, let me make it a little smaller. So E flat and E flat 7, that creates a chromatic bass line. Look at this, E to E flat to D. What's the bass note? Well, we're going down in half steps, right? It creates some tension and some interest. We no longer have the cycle bass line. We have this. So E minor, E flat 7, D minor to G. Okay? So the bass line is chromatic from E to D. And it's really nice to be able to do that and listen to the melody once again. And it's up to you if you like it or not. Maybe you won't do that, you don't want to do that the first time around, but maybe later in the song, it's nice to make a little change there. So that's called the tritone substitution. And I'm just going to change that bass note in notation here. Just adding that E flat right here. Now this would not be called a C sharp in this case, it would be called a D flat, but it's the same note really. So anyway, now we have the E flat 7 instead of A7. Could we use this again? Well, let's try it out. So in the next chord, we're landing on D minor. Let's keep the D minor. But look at the G7 right here. The G7 chord, we could actually use the same kind of a tritone substitution, on that one as well. Let's do that. So we had G7, right? G7 shell voicing looks like that, and once again we have that shell right here, or that tritone, I mean, right here. And so what's the tritone from G? Well, the tritone on the guitar is so easy to find. It looks like this. That's how it looks from anywhere. It's just that shaped. It's a tritone, right? You can also count to 5 in the major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then flat that 5 to get that flat 5 interval. But so you can see that we have a G in the bass here, right here. But instead of doing that, let's play a flat 5 substitution here. So where's the flat 5? Well, actually, it's right here. There we go. And I'm gonna now play a D flat in the bass instead. And that will sound like this. So we have this bass line now, E minor 7 to E flat 7, right? To D minor, and then after that, we actually go to D flat 7 to C. And look at the bass line, right? It's a chromatic, it's a chromatic bass line from E. It's so simple when you look at it like this. So listen to the sound. Before altering or changing any chords, we had this. Now I switched the C to the E minor, and we talked about that in the last lesson. And then I used the tritone sub on the A7 playing E flat 7. Then I used the tritone sub on the G7 playing D flat 7 after the D minor. So listen to the melody now. So now listen to the progression with the new changes. So the bass line goes from E all the way down to C, okay? It's tritone substitution, but not on every chord, but I'm doing it on the A7, changing that to E flat, or on the G7, changing that to D flat. So you can see that the tritone, the third and the flat 7th are the same for those chords. I forgot to mention that, but the flat 7 on the G chord is F. The third of the G chord is B. If you look at the D flat, the third of the D flat is F, and the flat 7 is the B note, or C flat in this case. You would call it C flat, but it's the B note, right? So they swap places. It's still the third and flat 7th, but they change. Now this is the third, this is the flat 7, and this is the third. You know, so that's how it works, a tritone substitution. And if I would do that, I can do that on this song on many different places. Let's take a look at the first part of this song, and I'll add some substitutions using this concept, and you'll get what I mean. Here we go. Okay, so here we have Blue Moon once again. I'm going to take away the title because I want to have some space for the chords. So I'm going to write with green color, I'm going to write the standard changes. Now I'm going to do the substitutions that we just did in the beginning there. So instead of C major 7, I'm playing E minor 7. Then we get into the flat 5 substitution. We're gonna play E flat 7. Then we're gonna keep the D minor for now. Then we're gonna change the G7 to the D flat 7. And then I'm gonna just change, keep the changes for now and play C major 7. Again. So let me play the first two lines, just really simple. So here we go. Okay, so that's the basic, that's the changes we now have made. And we're gonna continue now. I'm gonna actually go down to the third line here. You can see right here. I'm gonna change some chords right here now. So instead of, we could, like I did before, you know, I was playing that E minor chord instead of C major 7, right, as the first chord, and that's a common diatonic chord substitution that like we talked about in the last lesson. But now, if we could change that, you remember I talked about earlier that you can change the minor chords to make it a dominant chord, to make more tension into the next chord if it follows the cycle like that. We're going from E to A, and we could change that E7 and make that E minor 7 and make it an E dominant 7. Because that will take us to the A minor, and it will create even a stronger pull towards the A minor chord. So I could do that first and change that to use a secondary dominant and think E dominant. to A minor. Let me just show you how that sounds. I'm playing from the second line here. Here. So let me do it again. You could hear that E7 worked perfectly there instead of E minor. So that works. And we're going to A minor. So let me try one more thing. If we would have that E dominant 7, look at this interval right here. I'm going to just take away that melody and I'm going to just spell the chord of E dominant 7 right here. Look at this. We have E, we have, you said it, G sharp, and we have D natural. And that chord right here, it sounds like this. The melody is actually this note right here. This is the melody. But that's the chord. And if you look at that chord, if we would use the tritone substitution on the E7, what chord will we get? Well, tritone from E, we would land on B flat. B flat dominant 7, we could use that instead. B flat 7. Now that is the same, has the same tritone interval there in the middle. So if you listen to E7 and B flat 7, same third and seventh, they just swapped places, right? And we're going to A minor, so the bass line is now chromatic. We're going from, I could use red actually. We go from B flat here, and we're going to A, right here. We're gonna play the A note in the bass. So we have a chromatic bass line there, from B flat to A. So what we could do, first of all, let's listen to it. So I'm gonna play it from the beginning now, because so you can hear it in context. So could you hear it? So I'm playing B flat 7, but the melody note happens to be that E note. So it just happens to be a B flat dominant 7 with a sharp 11 or a flat 5. It sounds so complicated, but it's really, I just think of that E minor and I play B flat instead. That's all I think. I'm using the tritone substitution. So simple if you just look at it. So it sounds very theoretical. It sounds difficult when I'm explaining it, maybe, if you haven't had any experience with doing this before. But really, you could just look at the chords. If you have the cycle, you could change it. So instead of, before I played E minor to D flat, making a tritone sub on the A7 chord, now I'm playing E minor. Instead of E minor, I'm playing a tritone sub from E, playing that B flat, because we're going to A minor. So we get a chromatic bass line from B flat to A. I just wanted to play it one more time. D flat, C, A minor. And so forth. So we have a B flat 7 now, and we're going to change some more chords here. Let's make that dominant, that A7. You remember that we had that, this is totally diatonic, but let's make that a dominant 7 as well. Like we did before. A7, let's play it in A7. Now we have like B flat going to A7, right? B flat going to A7. Could we do the same thing on the D chord? Actually, let's try playing a tritone sub on the D chord. Where is the tritone from D? Well, we count to 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the scale, and go down a half step. That's the tritone. We land on the A flat note. So, without me explaining the details in the notes, you can see now that we have an A flat 7, and we have a chromatic bass line from B flat to A flat. And where are we going? Well, we're going to G, so that's perfect. We have a chromatic bass line from B flat. And we can go anywhere from there, really. But I'm landing on C, just like it says in the paper there. So now we've used the tritone sub right here, right? E flat, E minor to E flat. We use the tritone sub right here on over the G7, right? We each play D flat. Now we kept the progression and made it simple here. Just kept the same progression, the diatonic progression. And then we made a tritone sub from E, played a B flat instead of E minor. Then we changed that A chord and made it the dominant chord instead. And then the D, we changed to A flat instead. And then we kept the G because we wanted to keep that bass line, you know, chromatic bass line down to G. And then we resolve everything on the C chord. So let me play the whole thing now. And I'm playing it this in a simple way so you can hear everything clearly. Let me play from the top. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Second line, right? D minor, B flat, A flat. There we have it. So that last chord progression there sounds very bluesy. I think it sounds very bluesy. So from that second line, my tone isn't the best on my right hand. If you're wondering why, I'm holding this pen. I have it's difficult to play, but I'm trying my best. So you can also play, actually, instead of playing, I'm using that open no. That's an A flat with the flat 5 as well, but you know, it's just that the melody is written like that. So it happens to be that sound. You could also do like a slide there, A flat 13 or 9. So slide and then open string to G11 maybe, or G7 sus to C. Okay? Okay, so anyway, now we have changed a lot of chords here. We've used the tritone substitution a lot, and I hope you can try this out on any tune. Just try it out. If you have a simple tune, you have some 2-5-1s or 1-6-2-5 chord progressions in there. First of all, try making some of the minor chords dominant if they go fourth up or fifth down, meaning if they go home, so to speak. You can try making them dominant. And after that, try the tritone substitution. We have a lot of chromatic lines, or just by using that tritone substitution. So anyway, I hope you found this lesson interesting. I realize it can be a little bit difficult to explain this, but having the iPad, I think it really helps when I'm trying to explain things like this. If I would do this lesson without the iPad, just speaking, it would be a little bit more tricky to follow, I think. So hopefully let me know if you like this lesson. I certainly like to make these kind of lessons, and I'm glad you enjoyed the last one. I'm going to continue making these if you want me to. So thank you for checking this out, and have a wonderful day. Bye.